Okay, sweet. I'm just going to start for now. If more people join, it's all right. But my name is Bryn Fielberth, and I am an AmeriCorps member serving through Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. So thank you all for coming to this webinar focusing on transportation in the city of Lincoln, and it'll be outlining the concept of complete streets. So a couple of reminders for people joining us. You're all muted and your cameras are all off, so you can't be seen or heard right now. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, type them in the Q&A box, and then at the end we'll go over that. The webinar is also being recorded, so if you miss anything, it'll just be on our YouTube channel, which is Conservation Nebraska. And then also just a heads up, there is a short poll near the end that we're going to do that will ask a couple questions, and we just do this so that we can help improve future webinars and events. So with that being said, joining us today, we have a couple people from the city of Lincoln. We have Roberto Partida, who's a transportation planner, Stephanie Rouse, who's also a transportation planner, Kayla Kruske, an analyst at StarTran, and then Logan Spackman from BikeLNK. And so each of them will be presenting on an aspect of Lincoln's transportation and how everything is kind of interconnected. And so I'll let them take it away from here with sharing their screen and everything. So go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Bryn, for the introductions, and thank you to everyone for joining our webinar today. We're excited to talk about sustainable transportation in Lincoln and how each of our different sectors works together to create a more robust active transportation network. So, quick overview of the agenda. We'll start off with complete streets, an introduction, what it is and how it functions in Lincoln, dive into transit, and then talk a little bit about micromobility, and then our bike share and e-scooter share programs, and then wrap it up with traffic safety and kind of next steps and implementation. So to get started with complete streets, it's an approach, if you're not familiar with it, to planning, designing, and building streets that enable safe access for all users. So this includes pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, transit riders, and all ages and abilities. It's an approach designed to emphasize the needs of those who have traditionally experienced systemic underinvestment and those whose needs have not been met through our traditional transportation approach, which really focused on just vehicle access. And so this tends to be older adults, people that have disabilities, people who don't have access to a vehicle, and minority population. And it's really designed to be an approach for everyone. An example here of elements of a complete street, which I'll get into a little more in the rest of the presentation, but if you're familiar with Lincoln, this is the little commercial node at 11th and G Streets. So you have things like wide sidewalks in front of the businesses, there's a bus stop and good transit access, the ramps are ADA accessible, there's angled parking, narrow vehicle lanes, so it slows traffic down, crosswalk markings, we have separated bike lanes, and an established tree canopy that provides a more inviting environment for pedestrians using the space, and then curb extensions or bump outs that shorten the distance for pedestrians to cross. And in this area specifically, it also functions as a stormwater management technique. So our mobility options have really changed a lot over the past century and a half, and our streets really should as well. We started out with the invention of the bicycle, then we had subways and trolley systems. Those were eventually replaced with the automobile and transit systems. We eventually got connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles are on the horizon, electric vehicles, and now we have bike share, scooter share programs, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. But at some point in the 1950s, when the automobile became the primary mode of transportation, we stopped designing for other mobility options, despite walking and biking being such an important part of our network. And people will walk. There's been a lot of studies that show that depending on the distance and the destination, that a lot of people are willing to walk to their destinations. 46% would walk to church or school if it's within a mile, 35% to work. But often the built environment is what keeps people from wanting to walk or bike to these destinations. And within the planning department, which is where I'm housed, we have our comprehensive plan, which looks out to the year 2050 and has all these goals and action items to get us there to the vision that we've created. And as part of that, every year we put out this community indicators report measuring how close we are to meeting those goals and tracking progress over the years. And so this is just one of those elements in our community indicators report that focuses on active transportation. And so 20% of commuters in Lincoln don't actually use a single occupancy vehicle. A lot of those are carpoolers, but we also have a high number of people that commute to work walking, biking, or taking transit. And the graph on the right is a little disheartening that the share of active transportation modes has decreased so much since 1980, but it really has kind of leveled off in the last several years, and we've remained stable. And so who wants complete streets? I mean, there's been a lot of talk in the media about how millennials are driving less, looking for other transportation options. Annual miles traveled for 16 to 34-year-olds dropped 23% from 2001 to 2009. But it's not just millennials. Aging households really want the freedom to be able to get around when they stop driving. And so groups like AARP are really focusing on active living community and making communities more friendly to aging individuals. And then families as well want safe ways to be able to get to parks, schools, and other destinations. And then a report that was put out in 2020 showed that the pandemic really has changed a lot of our habits. The National Association of Realtors did a study that showed people care less about living close to highways, transit, and their offices, mainly because teleworking has become really prevalent ever since the pandemic, but walkability is becoming important for the boomer population, which in Lancaster County is expected to grow 15% by 2050. And so incomplete streets are really unsafe and inadequate, especially, as I mentioned before, for people of color, low-income communities, and older adults. And when you look at speed, it's the #1 culprit in fatalities between pedestrians and vehicles. The faster you're going, the less likely you are, a pedestrian is like the faster vehicle is traveling, the less likely a pedestrian is going to survive that impact. So being able to design streets that promote safe speeds and slow cars down and make drivers more aware of their surroundings is important. And so the next few slides kind of go over the elements of our roadway system that make them unsafe or poorly connected and uncomfortable for non-vehicle users, things like lack of sidewalks or dangerous street crossings, spaces that are not, or roadways that are designed without bicyclists in mind that create more conflict points and create confusion. And then overworked street networks also create traffic congestion and can be dangerous, increasing the rate of crashes while adding unnecessary emissions to the air as cars sit and idle. And then transit is a great way to reduce the number of vehicles, but having welcome, inviting transit stops is important to encourage more people to take transit. And here's an example of what's pretty prevalent in a lot of our older neighborhoods is curbs without ramps, which make it challenging not just for those with disabilities, but also parents pushing strollers. But we're actually doing a really good job of chipping away at these every year. Our sidewalk repair program is repairing a lot of these curbs and creating accessible ramps. And we know how to build right. We have really great infrastructure like N Street in downtown with the cycle track and the pedestrian refuges and the stormwater management practices. But we also still have a lot of areas like this in Lincoln where it's really unfriendly for someone to be crossing 7 lanes of traffic without any refuge islands on their way. So the solution is a complete streets policy. And what a complete streets policy is, it's making sure our transportation network is designed for all road users anytime we're doing a new project. And so Lincoln adopted our complete streets policy back in 2013 under then Mayor Beitler via an executive order and an administrative record. And it set up the Complete Streets Committee, which meets every quarter. And then just in 2021, we developed 2 subcommittees that focus on funding and policy that meet monthly. And we get a small allocation of funds, $50,000 a year, to be able to help do complete streets projects. And then this group also produces an annual report of activities over the previous year. So complete streets, it's not necessarily about one big special project. It's about changing the way that we approach transportation projects on all streets. There's not one specific design element or one approach that's going to work for every roadway. It's flexible and it's really context sensitive on that specific roadway. And adopting the policy didn't mean that all of our roads had to be changed all at once. It's really incremental and takes time. And when we're doing maintenance projects or rehab, we can take a look and see if there's ways that we can make the street more friendly to all users. Yeah, I forgot to advance. So what it doesn't mean, as I mentioned, it's not one specific project or design subscription. And there's no one silver bullet, because you really have to take things into consideration like land use. Like, you can create a really friendly roadway and a nice design, but if there's nothing for users to go to or no reason for them to walk along that street, it's not going to be well used. And so some of the elements of complete streets are different types of complete streets. They're shared streets. These are kind of our low volume residential streets. Traffic's usually driving 25 miles an hour. It's more friendly for bicyclists to be in the roadway with traffic. Our main streets, where you have a lot of commercial activity. Again, it's usually 2 lanes of traffic, low volume, easier for pedestrians to get around, more inviting, tree canopy. And then traffic circles, they're raised islands, typically in the middle of a 4-way intersection, used to help slow traffic speeds and reduce accidents in neighborhood streets. This one in particular is at 11th and D Street. And then roundabouts are one of Lincoln's best tools for reducing traffic congestion, keeping traffic flowing while reducing traffic accidents. And then transit, which I won't really go into here because Kayla's got a whole set of slides that she'll dive into transit. And then neighborhood greenways, they're similar to shared routes with low speed, low volumes, streets designed for residents who are walking and biking, giving them priority as opposed to the vehicles. It reduces automobile speeds, helps with cut through traffic. It's safer, more attractive. The closest street that we probably have is one of our newest bike boulevards on F Street, and it's a low volume residential street that doesn't have a lot of cut through traffic because of the railroad crossing. We added the pavement markings that you can see in the image here, and then signed the route as well. And then angled head out parking. It's something that Lincoln tried a while back and it didn't go over well, so took it out, but Omaha still has some. The benefit to this style of parking is that it flips the car around, so drivers entering traffic have greater visibility, reduces likelihood of crashes, and it helps with children getting in and out of the car because they're closer to the curb. And it's more economical than traditional parallel parking. Cycle tracks, on-street facility, I mentioned the on-street cycle track earlier. They're completely separated from traffic, using medians, bollards, markings. It encourages more bicyclists to use the space because they feel safer and completely separated from traffic. And then Lincoln is rapidly growing, and we still have areas like this, more rural areas within our city limits. And so paved shoulders provide a space for bicyclists and pedestrians to use. So implementation that we've done to date in the last 10 years that our complete streets policy has been in effect. As I mentioned, we have a small pot of funding, so it doesn't go very far to be able to do like a complete street overhaul. So we've done a lot of smaller projects like connections from a neighborhood to a trail that's 50 feet long, just to make accessible connections to our trail network, adding bike route signage to identify areas on our shared streets for bicyclists, putting in bike parking throughout the city. And we've mapped what we've done to date on our website. You go to bike.lincoln.ne.gov. We have a complete streets page that goes into more detail on complete streets and has this interactive map of all the projects we've done. We also have our Lincoln Bike Plan, which is a lot of what we are doing to get more complete streets is adding in bike infrastructure to our existing network. That plan has a very ambitious goal of 11 miles of bike boulevards, 58 miles of side paths, 88 intersection improvements, and almost 8 miles of street reconstruction projects. And we have a map of that on our website as well, of our existing bike network and the projects that we'd like to see get done. And then this is a project that was done recently. Roberto has more details, so I'll let him chime in if I miss anything, but this was a project that was a partnership between Safe Kids and our health department, Safe Routes to School, and Lincoln Transportation and Utilities, and then Lincoln Transportation and Utilities Traffic Engineering. And the primary goal of the project was to improve safety in front of Saratoga School. And one way to do that was to extend the 13th Street bike lane. So the issue was traffic had 4 lanes in either direction at this mid-block crossing. And so motorists weren't paying attention as they were crossing that mid-block crossing and looking for kids that might be crossing the street. And so on the west side of the street, the extension of the bike lane acted as a buffer, removing an unnecessary lane of traffic. So motorists were forced to pay attention as they were moving through the intersection instead of trying to merge or speed up and get around other vehicles to get ahead in traffic. And then on the east side of the street, it was marked and bollards put up to divert traffic, again, narrowing it down to 1 lane, forcing them through the intersection before being able to split off into the second lane. And it's a project that's won a few awards as well. So, and then we also are trying to do more with education and outreach, doing tabling events. We've got our website that we're constantly adding information to, and then doing presentations like this to let people know that we have a complete streets program and what it means for residents. And then last, I'll just talk about our checklist. So we talked about how this is an approach to our transportation network and how we build out. So we developed this checklist that we run all new roadway projects through that address each element of complete streets and make sure that we're considering what elements that we can add to a roadway project to make the street more welcoming to all users. And with that, I'll hand it over to Kayla to talk about public transportation.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Like was mentioned earlier, my name is Kayla Kruske, and I work as an analyst with StarTran, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about public transportation in Lincoln. So going on to the next slide, I'll start with a quick overview of what StarTran is. I'll go one more. And yeah, so we are the public transportation provider for the city of Lincoln. And we actually operate as a part of the city, as a part of our local government here. We are a division of Lincoln Transportation and Utilities. We provide both fixed route, paratransit, and on-demand services. Fixed route, just like the classic bus stop and buses that you'll see driving around town. They follow this map that you can see to the right. And in the last fiscal year, which was 2021-22, we provided 2.2 million passenger trips, which we're excited about, because still exiting the pandemic, and excited to see that number continue to grow over the next few years. But on to the next slide, I just wanted to mention our mission statement is to provide a customer-focused, forward-thinking public transportation system for the good of the Lincoln community. And I think when we start looking at a lot of the projects we have going on right now and all of our future plans, I hope that we're really embodying this mission statement and just looking to provide the best service that we can to the city and really provide what our community needs and what is best for Lincoln specifically. But going on, we'll look a little bit to the future and what plans we have in place for next steps at StarTran. And in doing so, on the next slide, I'll actually start with talking a little bit about projects we have going on right now or stuff that we've just done over the past few years, because it's all very exciting and I wanted to mention it. So first off, we have a new app that we just launched a couple months ago called BikeLNK or BikeLNK. And this allows you to not only, view routes and plan your trip, but also live bus tracking. So if it's really cold or really hot and you want to know when you need to be at your bus stop, you can pull up the app and see exactly where your bus is on the route, which is very exciting. We also have the Token Transit app, which allows you to purchase rides and passes with your phone so that you don't have to carry cash or go to a retail outlet to purchase a pass. We have a new system called Bus Buzz, which is a text-based information system. So we can send out updates if you sign up for them, and you can also reach out via text to, send us a compliment or a complaint if need be on, how our service is, how our operators are, if our bus is running late, you can let us know. We also, as you can see in this picture on the right, have digital monitors now installed on every bus, kind of the screen hanging down from the ceiling of the bus there. And this lets us provide updates on our services if we're closed for a holiday, advertise events we have going on in Lincoln, and just other exciting real-time updates about transit in Lincoln. And then finally, as of this Thursday, like 2 days from now, we are returning to full service. We have been running reduced service for about 3 years now, since the start of the pandemic. First off, it was because, and then we had a staffing shortage with our operators. But we are excited that we are finally fully staffed on operators. And as of Thursday, we will be running all of our routes until their usual time, which is as late as 10 p.m., which is very exciting. But going on to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our actual future plans at StarTran. And those are mostly guided by our Transit Development Plan, or TDP. That can be a little bit of a mouthful. Now, what the TDP is basically a plan that evaluates all of our existing services and provide some recommended improvements. So it's kind of a step back for our staff from everyday operations. We do a lot of comparisons to other cities. We do a lot of public outreach and really see what the priorities are for Lincoln. And in the plan, it outlines both short and long-term priorities. Our short-term priorities are kind of smaller things that we don't need more funding to do. Like, we're going to modify a few of our routes to improve on-time performance. If they, consistently run a little bit behind, how can we change that to make sure that the bus is there when you expect it to be there? And as far as long-term priorities, these are the exciting ones. And there's not funding guaranteed for these, so it is contingent on us securing funding for them, but it helps us know what we're trying to get funding for, if we're speaking with the city council or applying for grants. And our primary priorities are increasing frequency of service. So having a bus at each stop every 30 or even 15 minutes rather than every hour like happens on some of our routes. We would increase our span of service, which means maybe we provide service until midnight on all of our routes rather than just 10 o'clock. We want to add in Sunday service because we don't currently offer any, and then also add in crosstown service. And what this is you can see in the map on the right, we operate a hub and spoke style system, we call it. So all of our routes start at a hub in downtown Lincoln. They go out kind of like spokes of a wheel towards the edge of town, and then they come back in and meet back at that transfer hub. And this means that if you want to, if you're on North 27th and you want to go to South 27th, you have to go all the way downtown and then back out towards the edge of town rather than just cutting right across. And crosstown service saves you a lot of time and lets you just go straight from point A to point B, which would be an exciting improvement. And going on to the next slide, the even bigger project that we have in the works, which is very exciting, is our Multimodal Transit Center, or MMTC. So I mentioned that we have this hub and spoke style system. So all of our routes meet in the center of Lincoln for passengers to transfer. And currently our transfer center, if you can even really call it that, is at 11th and N Street. It was right by the Golds building, if that rings a bell, which they just demolished over the last couple of months. But that site is at capacity, which means that even if we had the funding and the community support to increase our frequency of service or add another route, there's nowhere for it to go. We don't have anywhere for the bus to come in and park and passengers to transfer to another route, which is really hard. It really limits our growth. But this updated MMTC will allow for this service expansion and then also offer better passenger amenities with a multimodal focus. So we'll have public restrooms and waiting areas. We'll have bike parking, electric scooter parking, and all sorts of other exciting updates to really promote transit in Lincoln. And this project is funded through a $23.6 million federal grant that StarTran was just awarded last year, 2022, which will fund both design and construction of the Multimodal Center. And we're expecting construction to be completed in 2026, which is very exciting. Going on to the next slide, I want to touch a little bit specifically on the sustainability of the service we provide, which, of note, public transit in and of itself is kind of a sustainable service. The more people we get on a single vehicle, the fewer cars we have on the road, which means fewer emissions, less traffic, fewer opportunities for distracted driving or accidents, as our operators are there. They're there to drive. They're trained to be safe and secure and to pay attention when they're on the road, which is always a good thing. But going on to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our fleet and the vehicles that we operate when we provide our services. So we run 67 buses and 24 vans, and over 3/4 of our buses run on alternative fuels. And this includes 41 compressed natural gas buses, as well as 10 electric buses, which is always exciting. If you see our buses on the road and it has like a big power cord looping across the edge, like kind of on the decal on the bus, that means it's an electric bus, which is kind of cool. And then in addition to that, 46% of our vans run on alternative fuels, which includes 11 compressed natural gas vehicles. But going on to the next slide, I'll finish up talking about transit with really a focus on other forms of transportation that we coordinate with. Now, I'm really proud of StarTran and kind of the city of Lincoln because everyone works together to really focus on this multimodal transportation. So first off, we offer an on-demand door-to-door rideshare service called BikeLNK. And this is a form of microtransit service that's kind of a fusion of like traditional bus service with like an Uber or a Lyft, where you're going from point A to point B, but you're doing it with other people. You're sharing your ride. And right now we offer this service throughout the city. But what we're looking at is in the future in our TDP, we talked about maybe having zones where if we aren't able to provide full bus service to a certain part of Lincoln, like if they're just, it's not dense enough to justify it, then maybe we can offer this microtransit service in those areas, and you can ride microtransit to your bus stop and then have kind of a multimodal ride in a new sense of the word for Lincoln. And in addition to this, every StarTran bus has a bike rack available for use on the front of the bus, which means that if you want to bike to your bus stop, or when you get off the bus, if you want to bike to work or to the grocery store or the park, we know, you can know that there will be a bike rack there on the front of the bus for you to use to take your bike with you. And in addition to that, we have a bus stop improvement project going on right now where we're installing concrete pads and benches at about 50 of our bus stops around town. And in addition to that, we're installing some bike racks at some of our higher ridership stops. So if you want to ride to or from your stop, but you just don't need your bike with you on the rest of the trip, you can lock your bike up there, know that it's secure, and not have to put it on the front of the bus and take it with you. And with that, I will go ahead, on that conversation of multimodal, I'll pass it off to Roberto to talk more about micromobility.
Thank you, Kayla. Hello, everyone. Again, name is Roberto Partida, transportation planner with the City of Lincoln Transportation Utilities Traffic Engineering Division. And what Kayla just spoke about incorporating bike racks into StarTran bus stops rather, and having the bike racks on the buses themselves directly contributes to the idea of what micromobility is. And on the screen there, essentially what it refers to is having a low speed, lightweight device like a bike or an e-bike or an e-scooter that are used to complete first/last mile trips or used to connect between other modes of transit. So if I live downtown and I want to take a bike share bike to the nearest StarTran bus stop where there's an existing bike share station, I can park that there, hop on the bus, and get to wherever my final destination is. So it's really about encouraging the use of multiple modes of transportation to get you from point A to point B. Next slide. So here in the city of Lincoln, we have two shared micromobility programs that support our overall goals of providing multimodal transportation options for enhanced mobility, creating livable and connected neighborhoods, and then maintaining a healthy and safe environment for all. These two programs are BikeLNK on the left there and ScooterLink on the right. BikeLNK is our bike share program. ScooterLink is our e-scooter share program. And these two shared micromobility programs not only connect users to existing transit networks, but also provide an affordable alternative to driving. And I will turn it over to Logan to talk about bike share.
Thanks, Roberto. Excited to be here. Yes, again, my name's Logan Spackman. I'm the BikeLNK city manager, and excited to talk to you all today a little bit about our bike share program in Lincoln. So, the three tenets I'm going to cover here is just who we are, a little bit about our operations and what usage has been like of bike share in the capital city. And then I do want to touch on, some of the sustainability and impacts we've felt in our community through having access to bike share. So for many of you, you've maybe seen our bikes riding around downtown or on the University of Nebraska Lincoln campuses, but many of you maybe haven't, or you've seen the bikes and you don't know what they're about. So for those of you who haven't, BikeLNK is Lincoln's only bike share operator. So when we talk about bike share, generally, we're talking about that shared micromobility for short-term bike rentals. So it's really access to bikes, whether you don't have your own or you don't want to deal with lugging yours around or securing it somewhere. You can utilize bike share to make those small trips, those first mile, last mile connections to your other modes of transportation. BikeLNK is the joint partnership between the city of Lincoln, who own all of the equipment here, and then the local 501c3 nonprofit Roam Share. So Roam Share is a nonprofit organization that exists for the development, promotion, and operation of bike sharing programs throughout the Heartland region. Roam Share also operate bike share in Omaha and Valentine, Nebraska. So we operate the program here in Lincoln, and it really originated here in Lincoln through the collaborative conversations of really engaged, passionate students, faculty members, staff at the University of Nebraska Lincoln, and those same passionate individuals here in the Lincoln community. In 2016, the city of Lincoln successfully applied for a CMAQ grant, which paid for the equipment to be brought here to Lincoln. And in 2018 is when BikeLNK officially hit the ground on the streets of Lincoln. So we just celebrated 5 years in Lincoln and really looking forward to see where bike share goes from here. So BikeLNK is using B-Cycle equipment. So that's a partnership with Trek. B-Cycle equipment you can find in about 36 cities nationwide, which means you can use that app in about 36 cities nationwide. Here in Lincoln, we have 21 kiosk stations and about 130 bikes. So those bikes are both classic bikes, or we call them acoustic bikes sometimes, but it's just that traditional bike. And then in 2020, we brought electric pedal assist bikes into our program. So we have about 25 electric pedal assist models here in Lincoln, and it's really been a game changer, not just for bike share here in Lincoln, but bike share across the country. So if you have seen the bikes, but maybe don't know where all of our stations are located, this is a map of downtown Lincoln. So I apologize if it's a little small on your screen, but our stations are located in downtown. We have a couple stations over in what's the Telegraph District now. We have stations in the Haymarket and the rail yard areas. We have stations on UNL's campuses, both their city campus, their East campus, and also out on the Nebraska Innovation Campus. And then we also have a really fun station at the F Street Community Center. So we're really located in these kind of primary corridors in and across downtown Lincoln. I do want to talk just a little bit about the operational, how does bike share work, and then touch on just what our usage looks like here in the city of Lincoln. So we're a docked bike share system in Lincoln, which means all of the trips that happen on bike share in Lincoln start at a dock and end at a dock. We operate all day, every day. So even when it's cold out, even when there's snow on the ground, we're out clearing the stations and making sure our bikes are ready for anybody that needs them. We're a multifunctional checkout process. So if you've been to a station, you've probably seen there's a little LCD screen and a credit card reader, and you can purchase a pass directly through there. We have monthly and year-long members here in Lincoln, and they can request what we call an RFID fob. It's a little fob that goes on your keychain, and then you can just take bikes directly through the docks. And then the most popular way to check out bikes, not just here in Lincoln, but really across the country, is through mobile apps. And you can see in the middle of this slide, there's a picture of our app and just kind of what that user interface looks like. So we have both membership options for visitors to Lincoln that are really focused around giving folks access to the bikes for either a day or 3 days. And then we have more extended access membership options for local residents that maybe want access to bikeshare for a month, a couple months, or you can buy a year-long membership. And all of those passes give you unlimited 1-hour trips over the course of that access period. So we do everything we can to make sure we're offering really affordable transportation. And then, as has kind of been hinted to earlier by Roberto and by Kayla, you know, we are positioned within the transportation network here in Lincoln. So all of our bike share stations are really located near StarTran bus routes in order to promote multimodal usage and to promote first mile, last mile trips, and using BikeLNK to, you know, get you to your destination or get you to a StarTran bus that can take you across town to wherever you're trying to go. And I threw this in just because I get a lot of questions about, you know, just how does bikeshare operate and who's out there maintaining the system. So we have a team of field technicians. If you're in and around downtown Lincoln, you might see a BikeLNK truck there. And we do have field technicians that are there to help balance the system to make sure there's always bikes in these locations and that there's always docks that you can drop off bikes to. They're doing year-round bike maintenance. They're installing any equipment or working on any software, hardware repairs. And then, you know, our equipment, all of our kiosks are solar powered. So right now is the perfect time of year for us because those batteries in the stations are pretty much self-sustaining. We don't have to do a lot to keep that system running. We do have a hybrid fleet vehicle if we need to move a couple bikes. And then we also have a shop e-bike and a trailer. So when it's really nice out, we try and use the bike to move and balance the system as much as we can. And then just as far as usage and what it's looked like here in Lincoln, you know, I mentioned we just celebrated 5 full years here in Lincoln. So we've supported over 180,000 trips in the capital city. That's about 34,000 trips annually that we're supporting. That's a total of about 428,000 miles that have been traveled by bikeshare in Lincoln so far. You know, we've had about 15,000 unique users, a lot of short-term pass members, but a significant number of folks that are utilizing bikeshare through an annual membership or a monthly membership. Those riders collectively have logged over 3 million minutes and burned somewhere around 16 million calories. So we can see those health impacts and those transportation impacts in some of those figures. And then lastly, like I mentioned, I just wanted to touch real quickly on the sustainability and some of the impact we've had here in Lincoln so far. So if we were looking at, you know, estimated carbon offset of our bike share program, you know, we estimate somewhere around 400,000 pounds of carbon offset in Lincoln since 2018 versus that personal motor vehicle. You know, and just to look at kind of mode behavior and folks that use bike share, what are they replacing bike share with, or what are they, you know, what are they using bike share to replace? You know, about 20% of those trips that they're taking replaces personal vehicle trips. About 17%, you know, would be a ride on taxi or Uber or Lyft through rideshare. About 10% through transit, and then, you know, some folks are using bikes when maybe they would otherwise walk. So we're seeing folks use bike share for a variety of different purposes, both for transportation, but also for recreation. And we've definitely had a big impact here in the Lincoln community, just as far as those community partnerships that we have. So on the next slide, just kind of talk a little bit about, well, what are some of those partnerships? We collaborate with community and cultural centers across Lincoln, really to make sure that bike-share is accessible to everyone, and that we're pursuing grant opportunities to get it into the hands of folks that might not otherwise experience or get to take advantage of the benefits of bike-share. We have a library pass program here in Lincoln. It's through the Bennett Martin branch in downtown Lincoln. You can go to Bennett Martin and you can check out a BikeLNK fob, just like you would check out a book, and they'll tell you a little bit about the program, and then you can get access to the bikes that way if you're looking to try it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we just want to do everything we can to make sure we're giving affordable program access to as many folks as we can. And then, the other benefit here is just that bike share is a great way to improve that pedestrian experience. It's reducing traffic, it's reducing road noise, and it's increasing the number of travel options we're giving Lincoln residents and visitors to explore and utilize essential services that are here in the capital city. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Roberto, and he'll talk a little bit more about the ScooterLink program.
Thank you, Logan. So, scooters, back in 2017, when scooters first came onto the scene, they were coming into cities unannounced and attempting to do their own thing. And, we heard nightmare scenarios from folks in different municipalities, and the city of Lincoln wanted to be proactive in that sense. And we're intentional about creating parameters to ensure that scooter companies were playing by our rules. So we decided to launch a pilot program that started in September of 2020. And it was a 16-month-long pilot program. And this was really meant to explore what e-scooters could look like in the city of Lincoln, what type of transportation behaviors would we see, and if it was a worthwhile venture. Fortunately, in the next slide, I'll talk about kind of what we got from the pilot, but to fast forward to now, we have a permanent program. City Council formally approved a permanent e-scooter program back in March of 2022. And the official program started last October and is currently running right now with both Bird and Lime scooters. Next slide, thank you. So what did we see in that 16-month pilot? We saw over 25,000 unique users take over 91,000 trips. That in itself is indicative that there's a real demand for this transportation option. No surprise that, the majority of the time it was evenings and weekends when folks were utilizing those scooters. And an average trip distance of close to a mile. With this, again, it showed that there was a real demand for it. I am seeing a comment right now that says, are there slides? No one can see them. Is that the case right now? Just want to double check that we're good.
I'm seeing them.
Okay.
So
perfect. I will continue on then. Alrighty. So next slide, Stephanie. With the scooter pilot program, we really wanted to look at it with a sustainability lens and really see if this was worthwhile from that aspect. And during the pilot, we conducted a user survey, and those that took the survey, 21% of them indicated that an e-scooter trip replaced a car trip that they would have taken. So using those metrics, we were able to calculate the amount of CO2 emissions that were offset, and that was roughly 10.7 metric tons of CO2 emissions. What exactly does that mean? That means because of that change in transportation behavior, we were able to offset a car making 224 round trips from Lincoln to Omaha. So once we start quantifying that, it's super encouraging, and we know that's a step in the right direction. Next slide. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the ScooterLink program is now officially a established program that was formalized in March of 2022. The official program started in October, and we had a winter pause for a little bit, and scooter operation resumed back in March. Big takeaways from the pilot program. We really wanted to be intentional about the environmental components of it. And we recognized that fleet vehicles and them needing to go to scooter locations to pick them up, to recharge them, those vehicle miles traveled add up. So we were super intentional about requiring whatever scooter companies came into the market to have swappable batteries to reduce the vehicle miles traveled by fleet operators. In addition, we wanted to expand the operating area to encourage other modes of travel. So as you can see there, it's a little small there, but we do have a ScooterLink website. If you want to go to lincoln.ne.gov and type in scooter, this should pop up immediately. But we've expanded the operating area to include some of the neighborhoods so that folks near downtown are able to get to the coffee shop, to UNL, what have you, without needing to drive by themselves in a car, find parking, and then walk to their establishment of choice. Next slide. So from my perspective, what we've seen with both bike share and scooter share is the huge potential that there is in encouraging different modes of transportation. And two concepts that we're actively working towards, one of them being the idea of mobility hubs. And that picture that I have there is kind of playing to what that is about. With mobility hubs, it's really a node that aims to connect folks to as many modes of transportation. This makes it easier for folks to, again, be able to take a scooter from this bus stop station to another mobility hub that may have their EV charging and ready to go, what have you, those type of components that, again, really encourage multiple uses of different transportation options. The last component there is mobility as a service, or MaaS. And this is really a concept aimed at creating an interconnected transportation system. So at a high level, what that could look like is one app on your phone where you have access to scooters, to bike share, to public transit, to Lyft, Uber, what have you, all in one stop. We're actively making steps towards that. Right now, both Bird and Lime have all of our bike share stations shown on their app. So if I'm on a scooter and I decide to park it here, but I don't want to take a scooter to wherever else I'm going and I want to use bike share instead, I can click on the bike share station on the app and it takes me straight to the bike share B-Cycle app. And then I can go on and do my thing that way. So baby steps, but we're heading in that direction and it's super encouraging and super excited for what's to come there. Next slide. So kind of a transition, but at the same time, any type of mobility that we want to do, sustainable transportation, at the end of the day, in order to encourage more folks to buy into it and to participate, we need to make sure that community members feel safe and have adequate access to facilities to participate in sustainable mobility. So with that, we within LTU Traffic Engineering are specifically focused on all things traffic safety, but more so on vulnerable road users. So those being pedestrians, folks on scooters, folks on bikes, folks rolling on rollerblades or what have you. That's a top priority for us, as they are the most vulnerable road users. Some of the key programs that I want to touch on here, the first one being Safe Routes to School. Second one, just our overall public engagement arm of traffic engineering, specifically focused on traffic safety, education, and outreach. And then lastly, a new exciting program, Safe Streets Lincoln, which is a Vision Zero program. Next slide. So to touch on Lincoln Safe Routes to School, Stephanie kind of alluded to it at the beginning a little bit, but really the overall goal of this is to improve the safety at all schools across Lincoln, both public and private. And this is really meant to enhance the PED environment for students, parents, guardians, school staff, and surrounding neighborhoods. And at the end of the day, what this does is creates a more livable, walkable neighborhood that encourages folks to participate in sustainable transportation alternatives. With this, LTU Traffic Engineering leads the city's efforts around safe routes to schools by conducting school evaluations, implementing the school zone safety improvements, and then the most critical piece is engaging with parents and guardians, students, LPS staff, and surrounding neighborhoods to really get a sense of what is needed in a community. Real quick, like to date, LTU Traffic Engineering has implemented 21 school zone safety improvements across Lincoln. 3 are slated for the summer. And then we are currently working with the health department and our Safe Routes to School group with safety efforts around Hartley Elementary, which has been super exciting. Next slide. So a big component that comes with any initiative that we do is really engaging and educating community members, putting a face to who we are at the city, and really just hearing folks out, whether they have comments, concerns, questions, what have you. We're there to listen and we're there to educate. This is a picture of myself and a colleague of mine, Melissa Ramos-Lamley, at the UNL freshman event last fall. And believe it or not, like our traffic safety trivia bike wheel was the most popular thing. We had a line and everything. And it's a great way to remind new drivers, old drivers, what have you, the rules of the road, both when you're a motorist, a cyclist, and a pedestrian. In addition to all of that, we've also been more intentional about our educational efforts and communication around traffic safety, both on our website and then our social media channels, which has been super exciting as well. So the last piece regarding traffic safety, and this is one that I'm super excited about. It's called Safe Streets Lincoln, and this is a Vision Zero program. What is Vision Zero? So at a high level, Vision Zero is a shift in thinking where we recognize that road deaths and serious injuries can and should be prevented. More often than not, the traditional thought is that, you know, it is what it is. Deaths happen, crashes occur all the time. What can we do about it? Under a Vision Zero lens, it's really refusing to accept that fatalities and serious injuries are inevitable consequences of mobility on our roadways. And this is a exciting program that our city is going to create a Vision Zero action plan. If you want to go to the next slide, Stephanie. So this is our high level Vision Zero goal, and it's to eliminate all roadway fatalities and reduce serious injuries by 60% by 2045. So the mayor officially announced at the State of the City address that we are moving forward with a Vision Zero program and a Vision Zero action goal, this being what I just reiterated. And the first steps is to create a Vision Zero action plan that will help us better understand where we need to focus our resources to ensure that we create a safe environment for all road users, and again, specifically vulnerable road users. I just want to quickly note that this initiative is going to be led by LTU Traffic Engineering in conjunction with all of our internal and external city stakeholders. And the last piece with Vision Zero that I'm super excited about, the city of Lincoln did receive a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant from USDOT for $400,000. And this money will be used to create our Vision Zero action plan. It's all going towards the planning process that will detail strategies, policies, and potential projects that we can work on to get towards our goal of eliminating all roadway fatalities and reducing serious injuries. That, in a nutshell, is it. I want to thank everyone for your time. I know it was a long webinar, but I want to leave you with this. Through the course of this webinar, we've talked about a lot of areas of transportation, from transit to bike share to scooters to traffic safety and just general mobility. The one thing to note, it takes a comprehensive approach to ensure we are planning for all these modes and ensuring that all residents of Lincoln have access to them when they need them. And using a complete streets lens and communicating amongst our departments ensures we move the needle in the right direction. So a lot of awesome stuff. Thank you again. Much appreciated.
Sweet. Thank you, Roberto. So if anybody has last minute questions, we have a handful of them, but feel free to ask them in the Q&A portion of the chat now. And then while we wait for any more questions, a short poll is going to pop up on your screen, and fill that out, please. And then we'll ask some of the questions. And then that shouldn't take very long. So then you'll be free to go. So just fill out that poll real fast and then we'll head. Okay, so first question that someone asked was, have any of the regulatory bodies in the city considered introducing design standards that implement complete street features during regular maintenance or replacements? So whoever feels most fit to answer that, go ahead.
We've discussed this quite a bit lately, because our first step was our complete streets checklist. So now we are looking at all different elements of complete streets with new roadway projects. So we'll look at things like our on-street bike plan, transit corridors, where improvements are proposed, and make sure that there isn't anything that we could potentially get built without those projects, and looking at it more comprehensively. specific to exactly how to do those improvements of what kind of street furnishings, how to design the bike lanes, parking, things like that. We would like to do that and get that done. I think we're kind of waiting for a full comprehensive document when we get started on our Vision Zero plan. So it's something that we are considering for future.
Sweet, nice. Anything else on that from anyone? Okay. Another question, are there helmets available for e-bikes and e-scooter users?
So I can take that real quick. Like we at the city co-sponsor micromobility events with the scooter operators where BikeShare is usually there as well. And at these events, both scooter operators hand out free helmets to anyone and everyone that's interested. And I know that if you go to both of the scooter operators' website, you should be able to request to receive a free helmet in the mail. So that's also an option there.
Cool, I didn't know that. Another question, is there education for cyclists and scooter riders for how to signal and yield to pedestrians, or is there a need for it, sort of thing?
So we do have a ton of information on the BikeLNK website. So if you go to bike.lincoln.ne.gov, there's a whole resource, or it's called Tips, Tricks, and Rules for the Road. We have a whole bunch of information about signaling, how to change lanes, and then we have like what to wear when you're bike commuting, how to use the bike racks on the buses, tons of videos. So there's a lot of resources out there for how to bike around Lincoln.
Cool. So this is from a teacher at Nebraska Westland, and she says, I'm actively working to promote and implement sustainable practices and programs on our campus. How do I get our campus to be part of the micromobility planning with like BikeLNK, ScooterLNK, and that sort of thing? From Maria Becker.
I think, Maria, step one is feel free to reach out to myself or Stephanie or Logan there. And I think step one is just coordinating a meeting and chatting from there. I welcome any partnerships with other community organizations or universities or what have you. So I'm in full support of that.
Have there been any thoughts of expanding bus services to the Haymarket on weekends, or for lead center events? Parking down there is nuts.
There have definitely been thoughts. That is one of the things that we hear about most often, especially with downtown events at PVA. Like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of cars. And unfortunately, there's a lot of like federal regulations that make it really hard for us to offer a service that's event specific for like a lead center event or a concert. But most of our route, or I shouldn't say most, a good number of our routes go through the Haymarket. And so if you're going to something on a Saturday afternoon or even on the evening, be sure to check out like our normal routes and see what services we have. And hopefully it can help you, even if you park like a mile away and you can ride that bus just that far, can get you a little bit out of the chaos. But yeah.
Thanks. Question from David, what's the downtown mix of scooter traffic on the street versus sidewalks? And he kind of talks about how scooters on the sidewalks present a safety hazard and feeling uncomfortable with them zipping past and that sort of thing. So any information on that?
Sure, yeah. So I'll start off by saying the safety of all pedestrians and scooter users is priority number one for myself as the lead managing the scooter program. We did conduct by we, I mean myself, conducted a scooter observation last summer where I literally walked around downtown for X amount of hours at a time to just do that, observe how folks were utilizing the scooters. And that percentage was was lower than 80. We did have a fair amount of folks that were riding the scooters on the street. What I will say to that, we have started to incorporate signage in more trafficked areas of the downtown space. So right now we have several signs all throughout the Haymarket and soon to be in the downtown space, reiterating to folks that legally, if you are on a bike or on a scooter, you are not allowed to ride on the sidewalk. In addition to that, we again continue to partner with the scooter companies to push out messaging both through the app, both on their social media channels, on our social media channels, to reiterate the messaging around that. If you do see any behavior, please feel free to submit an uplink, comment, or reach out to me personally, and I can coordinate with the scooter operators to investigate and resolve any issues that may arise. So yeah, it's an education thing, and we're working to continuously push out communication around proper scooter usage.
Thanks. Another question, I'm interested in this too. Any plans to have public transportation connecting Lincoln with Omaha?
Yeah, so we definitely don't have any firm plans in place. And as a Lincoln resident, I'm biased and would love a service like this. And I don't know if it's one that really would be offered by the cities necessarily, but when we were conducting or when we're designing our multimodal center, there's been conversations about reserving a bus hub or a bus stop in the multimodal center for an intercity bus line. And so if a company was interested in offering service between cities, it would have a dedicated place to come and stop at Lincoln's bus hub, so you could then get around Lincoln using the routes that we do offer. So not a great answer, but it's the thoughts are there at least. So yeah.
A problem with Complete Streets Guide in Omaha is it doesn't apply to private development, and street bonds can't be used if meeting it costs more. Does the Lincoln plan apply to private development?
Our current policy does state that it applies to any projects that are public or private streets or development projects. So it would apply, but we haven't had any privately constructed streets come through our Complete Streets checklist yet. So it's still new, but it does apply to private developments.
What transportation does everyone on the panel typically use? And if it changes, why so?
I'm a biker probably 80% of the year. When snow and ice hits the ground, I quit. I'm kind of a baby. So mix of driving my vehicle and transit in the winter.
Pretty similar. When I originally came to Lincoln for school, and when I was in school, I rode the bus fairly often. That's what I relied on. Mainly so I didn't have to buy a parking pass. And then last spring, my partner and I actually sold one of our cars to trade in for an e-bike because I am a little bit lazy about normally biking as well. But I do a lot of e-biking in addition to transit.
Car, bike. I live not too far away from work, so easy bike ride there. And then it would be a shame if I didn't say I use scooters from time to time as well. So
yeah, I definitely am lucky that I live and work pretty closely together. So I'm able to bike a good majority of the time. I don't know if I'm quite to 80% though. So that's a good goal for me to reach out for this year. And then yeah, I've been able to use the bike share when I'm in and around downtown. So it's kind of a combination of my own personal bike, my personal vehicle, and then the opportunity to use bike share. So
good answers. That's all the questions I have for now. So if anybody has any last minute ones, go ahead and ask. Or I guess this one says, there seems to have been some trouble with bike theft in Lincoln. Has anything been done to address this in disincentive to ride for transit?
I can kind of answer that. I know we're trying to, because the issue is just locking your bike up outside at night and not having a secure indoor location. And a number of years back, there were some I'm blanking, the bike lockers installed downtown at a few locations around the Haymarket. But we're also trying to work with new developments, especially when apartment projects are going in, to make sure that they're including bike lockers. So that way residents have secure locations to lock up their bikes at night. And there seems to be a trend that not even asking, they're putting in bike lockers because they're realizing the benefit and the need for their residents to have that feature. So next step is going to be trying to work with existing buildings that might be tight on space to try and find ways for their residents who have bikes to be able to securely lock them indoors at night.
On that same note, this one asks about if there's been any discussion about security cameras for new bike racks at bus stops.
We haven't talked about it too much. If you really are uncomfortable, we always like offer that you can put it, take it with you off with the bike rack on the bus. But it is something that I can bring up as we're talking about installing them and looking at that whole process and see how people feel, see what other cities do, and yeah, it's a good thought.
Let's see. This one says some bike racks are not amenable for proper locking of bikes. Are designs being reviewed and older racks being replaced?
We are encouraging to use certain new types of designs. I know we have a lot of the schoolyard racks that don't make sense for adult style bikes out there. Trying to encourage use of the hoop racks that are easier to lock up at 3 points on your bike and secure. But as far as regulating it, I mean, on new developments, we can catch them as plans are coming through, but we're only kind of replacing the outdated racks in the city right away, and mainly in downtown where we find them.
Thanks. Maria, again, related to the bike lockers, are businesses being encouraged to provide facilities for bike commuters, like lockers for clothes, showers, and so on?
Always an encouragement, and I think a lot of our bike-friendly businesses understand the benefit, and they've retrofitted spaces or added areas to be able to do that. I think that's kind of the next step horizon of trying to encourage those kind of features and new developments to support bike commuting.
Sweet. Last call for any questions. We've had some good ones. Okay, so with that, thank you so much to all of our panelists for speaking. I know this information was really interesting to me, so I hope that everybody joining us enjoyed it as well. As I mentioned, this webinar will be uploaded to Conservation Nebraska's YouTube channel if you are interested in that. And then feel free to check out our Facebook for more upcoming events. And we hope that we can see you again in the future. Otherwise, thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you to everyone who spoke. Enjoy your night.
Thank you.